In a significant reshaping of the U.S. State Department, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has recently announced the replacement of top diplomat for Europe with a former Senate staffer and consultant, marking a shift in personnel that has raised eyebrows among critics and supporters alike. This decision aligns with Rubio's broader strategy to streamline operations within the department and send a clear message about his administration's foreign policy priorities. Rubio's proposed reorganization comes on the heels of his controversial critique of the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, which he accused of being a platform for left-wing activists pushing anti-Israel agendas. The Bureau, which has faced scrutiny for its critical reports on Israel's human rights record, will now be renamed and downsized, with its responsibilities merged under a new coordinator for foreign assistance and humanitarian affairs. This change has sparked concern among advocates for human rights who argue that it undermines one of the few channels through which criticisms of Israel could be articulated within the State Department. In a pointed statement, Rubio justified the overhaul, claiming that the Bureau's focus on human rights had devolved into vendettas against anti-woke leaders in various countries, including Poland and Hungary. Critics, however, including former Bureau officials, have countered that Rubio's characterization is misleading. Charles Blaha, who previously directed the Bureau's Office of Security and Human Rights, argued that the department's tendency has historically leaned toward unqualified support for Israel, often overlooking egregious human rights abuses. The department is pro-Israel to the point of overlooking gross violations of human rights, Blaha stated. This contentious environment has intensified following the October 7, 2023 attacks by Hamas, which led to escalated military action by Israel. Internal dissent within the State Department has been evident, with officials like Josh Paul resigning in protest over continued arms shipments to Israel, reflecting a broader disquiet about U.S. foreign policy in the region. Paul described the situation as one that perpetuates suffering for both Israelis and Palestinians, noting that the U.S. support for Israel's military actions contradicts its stated values regarding human rights. The reorganization of the State Department raises questions about the future of specific human rights vetting processes established under legislation known as the Leahy Law, which prohibits U.S. aid to foreign military units implicated in human rights violations. Despite Rubio's efforts to diminish the Bureau's influence, advocates assert that the Leahy Law remains binding and must be enforced. Tim Reeser, a foreign policy advisor who helped draft the legislation, emphasized that the administration is obligated to uphold the law regardless of the changes within the State Department. As the political landscape continues to evolve, the implications of Rubio's reorganization will likely reverberate through U.S. foreign policy, particularly in relation to Israel and Palestine. Human rights advocates are bracing for a challenging environment as they seek to hold the government accountable for its commitments. The developments within the State Department signal a potential pivot in U.S. diplomacy, one that prioritizes a more ideologically aligned approach over the traditional emphasis on human rights and accountability. Looking ahead, the effectiveness and influence of the newly restructured Bureau will depend on the individuals appointed to key positions and the overarching goals set by Rubio and his team. With tensions in the Middle East remaining high, the State Department's new direction could either exacerbate existing conflicts or pave the way for a more nuanced engagement in international human rights discourse. As this situation unfolds, it will be critical to monitor how these changes impact U.S. relations both regionally and globally. In a dramatic shakeup at the Pentagon, Joe Kasper, the Chief of Staff to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, has been ousted amid rising tensions and a controversial leak investigation that has already claimed 3 other senior aides. This latest development marks a tumultuous chapter in the military's leadership, raising questions about Hegseth's management style and the broader implications for national security. Kasper's departure, which occurred just days after the Pentagon initiated investigations into unauthorized leaks of sensitive information, reflects a wider pattern of instability within Hegseth's inner circle. According to a defense official, while Kasper will remain at the Pentagon to work on special projects, the circumstances surrounding his exit emphasize the growing turmoil at the heart of military leadership. His tenure, which began only in late January, has been punctuated by his strong advocacy for aggressive counterterrorism measures and a controversial approach to classified information management. The catalyst for this upheaval appears to be Hegseth's handling of military communications, particularly involving the encrypted messaging app Signal. Reports indicate that Hegseth inadvertently disclosed operational details about U.S. airstrikes on Houthi militants while communicating with senior Trump administration officials, a conversation that mistakenly included an editor from The Atlantic. This breach has prompted a Pentagon Inspector General review, further complicating Hegseth's position. In the wake of Kasper's dismissal, 2 other aides, Dan Caldwell and Darren Selnick, were placed on administrative leave, suggesting a coordinated effort to address the fallout from the leaks. Caldwell and Selnick's involvement in the leaks investigation, which reportedly included discussions about operational plans for U.S. military action in the Panama Canal, has created a fraught atmosphere of mistrust and rivalry within Hegseth's staff. The investigation has reportedly revealed deep-seated interpersonal conflicts with factions forming around Kasper and his detractors, further complicating the work environment. Senior officials at the Pentagon, speaking on condition of anonymity, have expressed their concerns over Hegseth's ability to manage an agency overseeing over 2 million troops amidst this chaos. Hegseth, who took office with less experience than previous defense secretaries, has faced increasing scrutiny from both military and political circles. His leadership style, which has been characterized by a purging of officials linked to the previous administration's diversity initiatives, has alienated many within the Pentagon. The turbulence has not gone unnoticed outside the military. Former UN Ambassador Susan Rice, following her own dismissal from the Pentagon's Defense Policy Board, criticized Hegseth's handling of sensitive information as a huge breach of national security. In a scathing interview, she asserted that if the situation had occurred under the Obama administration, Hegseth would have faced immediate termination. Rice's remarks underscore the seriousness of the leaks and the potential impact on U.S. military operations. As the Pentagon grapples with this internal crisis, the implications for national security and military readiness remain unclear. With Hegseth's leadership under scrutiny and the fallout from the leak investigation ongoing, it is evident that the challenges facing the Pentagon extend beyond personnel changes. The coming weeks will be critical in determining how Hegseth navigates this turbulent landscape and whether he can restore confidence in his leadership amidst growing calls for accountability. The future of military governance hangs in the balance as internal conflicts threaten to undermine the very fabric of defense operations. In a dramatic reshaping of the United States public health landscape, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., recently appointed as Secretary of Health and Human Services (HHS), has embarked on an aggressive campaign to dismantle key health protections established during the COVID-19 pandemic. This sweeping overhaul comes amid a broader political context characterized by the controversial leadership of former President Donald Trump and the influence of billionaire Elon Musk, who have both backed Kennedy's radical reforms. As the nation grapples with rising health concerns, experts warn that Kennedy's actions could lead to a resurgence of chronic diseases and infectious outbreaks, potentially endangering public health. Kennedy's tenure at HHS began with a bold commitment to address America's chronic disease epidemic while simultaneously sidelining efforts related to infectious diseases. However, in practice, his administration has targeted the very infrastructure that supports public health initiatives. A recent report highlighted that Kennedy, along with the administration, has laid off approximately 20,000 employees, which constitutes nearly a quarter of HHS's workforce. The implications of these cuts are profound. Public health experts fear that the dismantling of immunization efforts will exacerbate existing health crises, particularly as the U.S. faces its most significant measles outbreak in over 2 decades. Dorrit Rice, a professor of law at the University of California, expressed concern over Kennedy's approach, stating if his goal is to undermine public health infrastructure, he's making strides there. If his goal is combating chronic diseases, he's not doing very well. The alarming trajectory of disease resurgence is not merely speculative, it is already materializing. In Texas, the cancellation of over 50 measles immunization clinics due to budget cuts has resulted in grave consequences, including fatalities among unvaccinated children. Kennedy's administration has also signaled a potential removal of COVID-19 vaccinations from the childhood vaccine schedule, a move that would complicate access for many families and could further diminish vaccination rates. He has publicly questioned the necessity of these vaccines, which are crucial for protecting vulnerable populations, including immunocompromised children. Critics have likened Kennedy's policies to a revenge of the COVID contrarians, where ideology supersedes scientific consensus. Greg Gonzalez, an infectious disease epidemiologist at Yale University, defined the administration's stance as one that disregards established science in favor of predetermined conclusions. They want to create a Potemkin village of their own making that looks like science but has nothing to do with science at all, he remarked. In a further twist, Kennedy's leadership has led to significant delays in the approval of new vaccines, including the Novavax COVID-19 vaccine, a situation that has raised alarms among public health officials. The FDA under HHS has stalled critical vaccine applications, prompting fears that the mRNA technology, which has shown promise beyond COVID-19, may be jeopardized. The fallout from these changes is echoed by Rosa DeLauro, a member of Congress and critic of Kennedy's approach, who has raised concerns about the elimination of vital public health agencies. Key organizations such as the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration and the Health Resources and Services Administration have faced severe budget cuts or outright elimination, endangering critical services that support vulnerable populations across the nation. Amid these tumultuous changes, the repercussions extend beyond immediate health crises. Experts warn that dismantling public health infrastructure not only threatens current health outcomes but can also lead to long-term chronic conditions due to the resurgence of infectious diseases. James Hodge, a health law expert, cautioned acquiring infectious diseases leads to chronic conditions later. As Kennedy continues his campaign to reshape the public health landscape, the future of American health policy remains uncertain. The ongoing pushback from public health advocates, the scientific community, and concerned citizens may dictate the extent of Kennedy's influence and the direction of health policy in the years to come. With the stakes so high, the need for vigilance and advocacy has never been clearer. As the nation stands at a crucial crossroads in its public health journey, in a significant policy shift, Attorney General Pam Bondi has rescinded protections for journalists established during the Biden administration, allowing the Department of Justice (DOJ) to once again utilize subpoenas and compel testimony from reporters in leak investigations. This move, announced in an internal memo on April 25, 2025, has raised concerns among media advocates regarding press freedom and the potential chilling effects on investigative journalism. Bondi's memo highlights the DOJ's renewed commitment to investigate and prosecute federal employees who leak sensitive information. Federal government employees intentionally leaking sensitive information to the media undermines the ability of the Department of Justice to uphold the rule of law, protect civil rights, and keep America safe, Bondi stated. She emphasized that the department would take a more aggressive stance in pursuing those who disclose classified information, which she described as illegal and wrong. The policy change marks a stark departure from the Biden administration's approach, which sought to protect journalists from having their records secretly seized and their identities revealed during investigations of leaks. Under former Attorney General Merrick Garland, the DOJ had set strict guidelines limiting when prosecutors could pursue reporters' records. This included a promise to avoid secretive tactics unless under exceptional circumstances. Bondi's memo not only reverts to a more aggressive posture reminiscent of the Obama and early Trump administrations, but also includes new procedural measures meant to limit the frequency of such subpoenas. While she acknowledged the importance of a free press in a democratic society, she asserted that the DOJ would ensure that actions against journalists would require heightened approval and prior notification whenever possible. The ramifications of this policy shift extend beyond the immediate implications for journalists. Bruce Brown, president of the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, articulated the broader societal impact, stating that some of the most consequential reporting in U.S. history was made possible because reporters have been able to protect the identities of confidential sources. He underscored that such protections not only serve journalists but the American public at large, facilitating vital discourse on issues of national importance. Bondi's decision comes in the context of heightened tensions within the intelligence community as allegations of leaks have emerged, prompting calls for accountability. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of National Intelligence, has reported multiple criminal referrals to the DOJ concerning alleged leaks that she claims serve partisan interests contrary to government effectiveness. This environment has fueled a narrative of conflict between the administration and the press, with former President Trump, a vocal critic of the media, returning to the White House and reigniting his campaign against what he terms the enemy of the people. As the DOJ prepares to implement this revised policy, concerns linger over the potential for increased scrutiny and pressure on journalists. The balance between national security and press freedom remains a contentious issue, one that will likely shape the landscape of American journalism in the years to come. Moving forward, the implications of this policy will be closely monitored by both media organizations and civil liberties advocates as they navigate the complexities of a changing governmental approach to press freedoms. In a striking display of dissent, a group of 140 Yale University alumni has issued a public letter urging U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to reconsider his role in the Trump administration. This unprecedented plea, which cites the potential for the United States to slide into authoritarianism, underscores the growing unease among former classmates as they witness the unfolding political landscape under President Trump. The letter, dated April 23, 2025, calls on Bessent to reflect on his participation in facilitating the Trump administration's intended transformation of the United States into an authoritarian state. The signatories, who include a diverse array of professionals such as lawyers, CEOs, journalists, and educators, argue that many actions taken by the administration are not only unconstitutional but also undermine fundamental democratic principles. Scott, please take a moment to step back, look down the road a piece, and think hard about whether you want to be responsible for enabling the descent of America into fascism, the letter implores. The alumni emphasized that as a former political science major, Bessent is well aware of the constitutional checks and balances that are meant to prevent the concentration of power in any one branch of government. They provide a list of alleged abuses, including the administration's attacks on the media, punitive immigration policies, and conflicts of interest involving figures like Elon Musk. In response, Bessent has dismissed the letter as an odd and sad attempt by individuals he barely knows to influence his life choices. These are the same close-minded progressives who have sought to undermine President Trump at every turn, he stated, adding that serving in the Trump administration is the honor of my lifetime. He further criticized the signatories for their lack of engagement in the political process, suggesting that they should take active roles rather than resorting to keyboard activism. The backdrop of this letter coincides with reports of a heated confrontation between Bessent and Musk over the appointment of a new Internal Revenue Service commissioner, revealing a power struggle within the administration. Sources describe the exchange as a screaming match, highlighting the intense dynamics at play among Trump's advisors. The White House, however, has characterized these disagreements as part of a healthy debate that is essential within the administration. This discord among high-ranking officials is compounded by the concerns voiced by the Yale alumni. David Cowlick, one of the letter's signatories, articulated his worries about the erosion of due process and other constitutional protections, indicating a pervasive anxiety about the implications of the administration's actions. If people like us and Bessent don't stand up and say enough is enough, there is a real danger of further sliding into an autocratic government, Cowlick warned. The letter's author, Catherine Teagarden, expressed a desire to amplify the voices of those who feel helpless in the face of the current political climate. She acknowledged that many were reluctant to sign due to fears of retribution, illustrating the climate of anxiety that pervades discussions around dissent within the administration. As the political landscape continues to evolve, The implications of this growing dissent among alumni and the tension within the administration raise critical questions about the future of governance in the United States. The letter serves as a reminder of the responsibilities held by public officials and the potential consequences of their actions on the democratic fabric of the nation. With the 2028 electoral cycle on the horizon, the actions of Secretary Hegseth and the administration will likely remain under scrutiny as citizens and officials alike grapple with the pressing issues of governance and accountability. In a heated exchange on CNN's State of the Union, anchor Jake Tapper confronted National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett over conflicting statements from Trump administration officials regarding tariffs. The discussion highlighted persistent confusion about the administration's policy on tariffs, particularly concerning exemptions for certain electronic goods, and underscored the broader implications of these inconsistencies for American manufacturing. During the segment, Tapper pointed to a recent statement from U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, who had declared that President Trump did not intend to allow exclusions from the tariffs on imported goods. However, just days later, reports emerged confirming exemptions for electronics such as smartphones, computers, and semiconductor chips. Tapper framed this situation as indicative of mixed messages from the administration, questioning whether officials were adequately informed about the tariff specifics. Hassett, however, staunchly defended the administration's position, asserting that the understanding of these exemptions had been clear all along. "I disagree with that," he stated, attempting to clarify that the information about electronic exemptions was not as contradictory as it appeared. He suggested that in the fast-paced environment of interviews, officials may struggle to convey the full context of their statements. Tapper pressed further, questioning the rationale behind the tariffs if exemptions existed, especially when the administration had positioned the tariffs as a means to revitalize American manufacturing. In response, Hassett pointed to a recent jobs report indicating a surge in employment, attributing this growth to the administration's policies aimed at encouraging domestic production. "If they make it in the U.S., they're not going to pay any tariff," he explained, suggesting that the ultimate goal of the tariffs was to incentivize job creation within the country. Despite these claims, confusion remains among lawmakers and the public about the administration's tariff strategy and its intended outcomes. Critics argue that the lack of clarity could undermine the very goals the administration seeks to achieve, potentially stifling growth in the manufacturing sector rather than promoting it. As the Trump administration navigates these complex economic policies, the ongoing tension between clarity and conflicting messages may present a significant challenge moving forward. The ramifications of tariffs on both domestic and international fronts are still unfolding, and stakeholders from various sectors will be watching closely to see how these policies evolve in the coming months. The potential for infighting within the administration is highlighted by this exchange, could further complicate the economic landscape as the nation seeks stability and growth in an increasingly competitive global market.